I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of story that changes the way you see the people closest to you. I sat down at the dinner table on an ordinary Tuesday. Nothing felt different. But by the time I went to bed that night, everything I thought I knew about my family was gone. And what I found out next, most people can't even bring themselves to say out loud. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Welcome back to Family Secrets and Revenge. To everyone in our quiet suburban neighborhood in Savannah, Georgia, Elena and I were the gold standard of marriage. 10 years. A beautiful sunlit colonial home. A bright 7-year-old son named Leo who had my grandfather's eyes. I was a structural engineer, a man who built his entire life on calculations, blueprints, and concrete certainties. I trusted structure, and for a decade I believed the foundation of my life was unbreakable. Elena was a graphic designer, a vibrant woman whose warmth balanced my analytical nature perfectly. We didn't fight. We didn't drift, or so I thought. Looking back, the fractures were there, hidden just beneath the smooth lacquer of our daily routine. It started with small things. A sudden, intense protectiveness over her phone. Elena used to leave it floating around the kitchen island or the coffee table without a second thought. Then, almost overnight, it became an extension of her hand. It face down on every surface. The password changed from our anniversary date to an alphanumeric sequence she tapped out with lightning speed, shielding the screen with her shoulder. Then came the business trips. Elena's freelance design business suddenly landed a massive corporate client based out of Atlanta. It required overnight stays. First, it was once a month, then every other weekend. I supported her. I was proud of her success. When she would return on Sunday evenings, exhausted but strangely hyperactive, I would have dinner waiting. But the emotional distance was growing. When I reached for her hand in bed, she would gently pull away, claiming a headache or sheer exhaustion from the road. It happened on that fateful Tuesday evening. Elena was in the shower, the steam billowing out from under the bathroom door. Her phone sat on the nightstand. Suddenly, it vibrated violently, a succession of rapid-fire alerts lighting up the glass. Usually, her privacy settings hid the message previews, but a recent software update must have reset them. I glanced over from my book, intending to ignore it, but the name that flashed on the screen made my blood run cold. It was saved simply as work client, but the preview message was devastatingly intimate. The text read, "Missing you in that hotel bed tonight. Counting down the days until next weekend, my love." My heart didn't just drop, it stopped. The room felt completely devoid of oxygen. My trembling hands reached for the device. I pressed the screen, and because Elena had asked me to look at a photo earlier that afternoon, her Face ID hadn't fully locked down the master privacy folder. The floodgates opened. Years of digital betrayal poured out in front of my eyes. It wasn't a recent lapse in judgment. It wasn't a weak moment. It was a secondary life. The chat log stretched back over 4 years. The man on the other end was Julian, an executive at the very firm she claimed to be freelancing for. But the emotional devastation compounded with every scroll. There were photos. Photos of them on vacations I thought were business seminars. Photos of Julian holding my son Leo at a park in Atlanta during a weekend I was told was a strict professional conference. My mind fractured into 1,000 pieces as I stood by the bed, hearing the water turn off in the shower. I realized that my entire reality, the very fabric of my fatherhood and marriage, was an elaborate piece of theater. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story, and share your thoughts in the comments. I had to make a choice in that split second. Do I scream or do I plan? When Elena walked out of the bathroom, wrapping a towel around her hair, she smiled at me. It was the same practiced, loving smile she had given me for a decade. It sickened me. I turned the phone toward her, the screen glowing with Julian's text message. The smile vanished from her face so fast it was eerie. The color drained from her skin, leaving her a ghostly hollow pale. "David," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. For the next hour, I watched a masterclass in manipulation. First came the denials. Then came the minimization. It was just text messages, just a fantasy. But when I brought up the travel dates, the photos with Leo, and the 4-year timeline, her defense collapsed. She broke down, weeping on the edge of the bed, begging for forgiveness, blaming the stress of her career and a passing sense of loneliness. But the story takes a darker, more calculated turn here. As the days progressed, I refused to leave the house, consulting with a top-tier family attorney in Savannah. I began auditing our finances. That's when the second knife entered my back. Elena hadn't just been unfaithful with her heart and body. She had been systematically draining our joint marital assets. Over $150,000 had been funneled into a private account under her maiden name, used to fund their rendezvous and secure a down payment on a condo in Atlanta. My attorney gave me a stark piece of advice. Anger is a luxury you cannot afford right now. We needed precision. If I divorced her immediately in a fit of rage, the court might view the assets as tangled, and the emotional fallout could jeopardize my custody of Leo. I had to play the part of the grieving, desperate husband willing to try marriage counseling. For 3 agonizing weeks, I pretended to consider reconciliation. I sat across from her in a therapist's office, letting her believe she was successfully managing me. While Elena poured her fake tears out in therapy, my legal team was pinning her down. We secured forensic accounting records of the hidden bank account. We subpoenaed hotel registries, flight itineraries, and text message archives through a private investigator. I discovered that Julian was also married, with a family of his own in an affluent Atlanta suburb. Elena thought she was securing her escape hatch. In reality, she was building her own scaffold. The trap was sprung on a Friday afternoon. Elena was packing her bags for what she claimed was her final wrap-up meeting in Atlanta. She kissed my cheek and told me she loved me, promising that when she returned, we would start fresh. I smiled and told her I had left a surprise for her in her briefcase. The surprise was a neatly bound, 200-page legal dossier containing the divorce petition, the forensic financial audits, and a demand for full custody of Leo based on asset dissipation and emotional endangerment. Simultaneously, an identical copy of that dossier was delivered via courier to Julian's wife at her home, and another copy was emailed directly to the chief executive officer of Julian's firm, detailing a massive conflict of interest and misuse of company expense accounts to fund an illicit affair with a contractor. By the time Aslena's plane touched down in Atlanta, her secret life was in absolute ruins. Julian was terminated from his position by 5 p.m., and his wife filed for divorce before the weekend was over. Elena rushed back to Savannah that same night, manic and screaming. But the locks on the colonial home had already been legally changed, and a private security detail stood at the perimeter. She had lost her leverage, her lover, her hidden wealth, and her reputation. The court proceedings were swift. The evidence of her financial fraud was undeniable. I was awarded sole occupancy of the home and primary physical custody of Leo, ensuring his life remained stable and protected from the chaos his mother had invited. It took months for the silence in my home to feel peaceful rather than lonely. But as I look at Leo today, playing in the backyard, I know that building a life on a beautiful lie is far worse than facing a devastating truth. Thank you for listening to this journey on family secrets and revenge. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to trust their instincts, and leave your overall thoughts down below. I read every single story you share.